Is this live? It is. Good afternoon, or good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome here. I'm Arno Dirksen, the Reeve of the County of Newell, and it's clearly my pleasure to welcome everyone here this morning for this exciting announcement. As a cattle rancher, what happens on this site is very important to me because it's part of our livelihood. It's important that it's efficient, economic, and safe. As the Reeve of the County, it's important that we provide safety for people when that's an opportunity. So I think it's a very exciting day today, and want to thank the province for this partnership to ensure that the 3,000 people that come here to work every day have a little more time in their day because they're able to get in and out efficiently. That's pretty exciting. I'm not going to go into the details of this. I just want to say what a privilege it is for the county to partner with the province on getting this project done. I will say that don't read anything into the April 1st announcement. This is going to happen. So that's all good. And again, I want to thank Lakeside for the good work they've done together with us. And again, thank you to the province, to the minister and the premier for this exciting announcement. So welcome all.
Thank you. Well, thank you. I know that Brooks is the city of, 1,000 hellos or 100 hellos? So I don't know how many of you celebrate April Fool's Day in the country of your origin, but this is not an April Fool's Day joke. If you don't know what we're talking about, then ask your neighbor, because somebody will. But it is also my birthday today. And so thank you. Someone wished me, thank you. Someone wished me a happy 44th birthday, and I said they were a decade off. I'm actually only 34. That's an April Fool's joke. Okay, but I am happy to be here with the Minister of Transportation and Economic Corridors, Devin Dreeshen, Arno Dirksen, of course, the Reeve of the County of Newell, Joel Goodenough, Deputy Mayor for the City of Brooks, and Celio Fritsch, President of JBS Foods. And we are here for an announcement that I know you have all been waiting for, because I know many of you have been advocating this for a very long time, but we're talking about road improvements in Newell County that we have all been waiting for. This beautiful region is as Alberta as it gets. And of course, it happens to be one of the most productive agricultural areas in our province. Agriculture generates huge economic activity and supports good jobs throughout Newell County. One of the most important operators out here is JBS Foods Canada. Since 2013, JBS has operated the former XL Foods meat processing plant just outside of Brooks, employing thousands of local residents. It's hard to overstate how important this operation is for Brooks, a city of around 15,000 people. Last summer, JBS announced a major investment of $90 million to add a new patty processing line to its plant, enabling it to ship 7 million more kilograms of top-quality Alberta beef to restaurants across Western Canada every year. Our government is thrilled that JBS Foods Canada is betting big on its plant here. Investments like this grow the economy, create jobs, and strengthen communities. And as our province and our economy grow, we need to continue investing in infrastructure to help people reach their destinations safely and efficiently. And that's why we're here today. The drive from the JBS plant to downtown Brooks is less than 8 kilometers, and it should take 10 minutes. Now, 10 minutes is a dream commute by just about anyone's definition. Unfortunately, for plant workers living in Brooks, 10 minutes from JBS to home remains exactly that, a dream. The reality is that the intersection of Range Road 150 and the Trans-Canada Highway creates a huge bottleneck. Drivers are challenged with safely turning onto a provincial highway with traffic coming at them at highway speed in both directions. And anyone who's made a hard left turn onto a highway knows you need a long, clear gap in oncoming traffic. Multiply that by the string of vehicles leaving the plant at shift change, and it's easy to see how this road can get backed up in a hurry. When most folks think of traffic congestion, they're picturing rush hour in a big city, not gridlock on a country road. But that daily frustration is just as real for JBS workers as it is for urban commuters. We're going to give that precious time back to them. And I'm happy to announce that we are providing funding for a road that will connect the JBS food plant to Highway 873. This will enable plant workers to bypass the congested intersection and use a quicker, safer secondary route, cutting up to 45 minutes off the time it takes workers at the plant to get to and from work each way so that they can spend less time stuck in traffic and more time doing other things. The JBS Foods plant is growing, just like Brooks and the rest of Newell County, And this project will support that growth, improve the road infrastructure in this key part of Alberta, and enhance the quality of life for the people who live here. Thank you. And with that, I would like to invite Minister Devin Dreeshen to share the details of the project.
Well, thank you very much, and happy birthday, Premier. I knew that, but I didn't wish you happy birthday when you walked here, so that was a mistake on my part. But good morning, everyone. It's so great to be here. I'd obviously like to thank the birthday girl for being here in support of this project, as well as Newell County, the City of Brooks, and JBS Foods, and all the workers and everybody coming out here for this very important announcement. And today I'm pleased to announce with Premier a $1.8 million investment into local roads improvements here in Newell County. Now, this funding includes a $1.2 million grant from Transportation Economic Corridors STIP funding program, which is the Strategic Transportation Infrastructure Program, as well as another $600,000 that will come from the Provincial Capital Maintenance and Renewal Funding Program. So as the Premier mentioned, the improvements will facilitate better traffic flow and enhance safety with a road connecting the JBS food plants to Highway 873. This will also provide a safer alternate access to and from the JBS plant. And Newell County will actually be delivering this project with our provincial funding to support and actually pay for the project. Now, Highway 1 is a major economic corridor in Alberta. About 8,500 people use it every day in this area. And now to get to JBS Foods plants, employees usually have to turn off of Highway 1. And this is important because, as folks here likely know, congestion is becoming a significant issue through this area. Now, this extra traffic is not surprising, as we've seen Newell County and the City of Brooks grow with the expansion of the JBS food plant. Now, drivers can sometimes spend up to an hour leaving the plant after work just to get home at the end of the day because of congestion caused by getting onto Highway 1. So it's clear that we need some better options for folks in Newell County and the Brooks area. Building a better connecting road to Highway 873 will enable traffic to flow more efficiently in this area with less congestion and shift volume away from Highway 1. Now, the design is done and the construction tender will be out shortly. And this is just another example of our government making investments to develop and to maintain municipal transportation infrastructure by partnering with municipalities to benefit all Albertans. And with that, I'd like to invite Joel up from Brooks. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much. I want to welcome you to being here today. We, as the City of Brooks, on behalf of Mayor Petrie, myself, we are excited for this amazing announcement. This is a project that we have been hoping for many years, and we are excited as we represent you, the residents of City of Brooks, to be a part of this. We are thankful for the County of Newell and for JBS and for the government of Alberta in seeing the needs of seeing that our residents get home and arrive safely and get to work safely on time. Also, I want to thank you for being a part of this today, and that is my comments. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. So, Premier, am I going to open up this and asking the team members, they're the one going to be the most benefited? How you guys feel about this one? Okay. Well, that explains a lot. I don't think I need to spend 30 minutes a speech here anymore. Well, on behalf of JBS Canada, in the name of 4,000 team members across Canada, I'd like to extend our deepest gratitude, for the Alberta Premier, Danielle Smith, for an amazing job she done for the industry and for the community, for the Minister of Transportation, for the City of Brooks, and Arno for, here's Arno, County of Newell, moving the barriers away from companies like us. And for being with us here today, the construction, and for turning this project to a reality, right, which for many years we all been fighting for. The construction of this new access road, it represents a commitment to the well-being. The most important, the safety. Our team members and all the stakeholders and partners. Because when we're looking about the traffic we got here in the facility, it's not just the time saving, but it is the life savings, possibly life saves when you're crossing that dangerous Highway 1, when you had thousands of trucks and cars and team members coming to the plant in and out. when we're talking about in the last few years, we've been adding over 1,000 team members in this facility here, allowing us to produce, enabling us to produce over 50% more food, putting food in the Canadian industry, and which naturally that has increased substantially the food traffic here in this facility. This road will allow team members to access the facility way quicker and securely. We're proud to be part of the community of County Newell and Alberta, province of Alberta. And thanks again, Premier, for making this project happen and all the partners around and helping us to build a stronger and safer community. Appreciate everyone for that. Thank you.
Thank you to all of our speakers. We'll now head into the media Q&A portion of this announcement. For media here and on the phones, we'll be taking one question, one follow-up today. I know we have at least one local outlet here. I just asked if they're the first up at the podium. And for a rather large audience that we have here, just know that you probably won't have all these questions coming in on topic, as there's a lot of other news going on in the world. And with that, we'll go to our first at the mic.
Can I just say I want a hug from Biscuit at the end of this.
To the Premier, Eli Ritter, Chat News. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
First off. I guess my first question is in regards to your What's Next post-election panel that you mentioned over the weekend. What would you say to those who criticize you for sort of entertaining the idea of Alberta independence as Canada faces a trade war and threats of annexation from the U.S.?
Well, I love Canada, and I want Canada to work. I've been on Team Canada from the beginning. It's part of the reason why I've been relentlessly going to the United States and trying to advocate for all of our industries, for all of Canada, in every venue I possibly can. But I'm also Premier of Alberta, and quite frankly, at some point, Canada has to start working for Alberta, and it's not right now. We have a number of policies that came in over the last 10 years that have been damaging to Alberta prosperity. It's been damaging to our freedom as a province. And if they persist, it is going to continue a dysfunctional relationship that harms Alberta. So I put forward the 9 major policies that I think have to be repealed after the next election. Unfortunately, the current Prime Minister, despite what he said to me privately when he was here, has now gone public saying he supports export taxes, he supports Bill C-69, he supports emissions caps. That is moving in the wrong direction. So we will get through this election. We'll see who ends up winning, and I will continue to advocate for those. And that's part of the reason why I will do a What's Next panel. We did that when when my predecessor came in to hear some of the concerns that Albertans had about how to repair the relationship with Canada at that time. And it'll be time for us to do it again.
Yeah, okay. Just a follow-up, one of the main issues you brought forward about a month ago was interprovincial trade barriers.
Mm-hmm.
Has there been any sort of progress on that so far? I know you said Alberta was open to signing, kind of free trade agreements with other provinces. Has there been any progress?
Alberta has always been a leader on getting rid of interprovincial trade barriers. I mean, just look at how we have the only free enterprise system for liquor as an example. We've got 36,000 products that are on our shelves in Alberta. Maybe slightly fewer at the moment since we're not ordering American products for the time being while we're in the middle of a tariff war. But all of our other provincial premiers, I'm challenging them to be as open as we are on that front. When we also had 27 different exemptions on industry when my predecessor came in, he immediately eliminated 21 of those. And then there were a couple of others that were added around hazardous waste and the cannabis industry. So I think only have about 8 exceptions. Others have dozens and dozens, so they've got a lot of work to do. Same with recognizing credentials of individuals trained in other provinces. There's only about 8 different professions that we have extra training for because we have a higher level of care that they're allowed to deliver. For instance, we allow dental hygienists to do anesthetics and sedation. And so those are the kind of things that we think are reasonable, but we're challenging the other provinces to do the same. I'm encouraged to see that Nova Scotia is putting forward a sweeping mutual recognition piece of legislation. I'd encourage other provinces to do the same. We're prepared to do unilateral recognition if we can't get mutual recognition, because that's how important we feel it is to be able to have that mobility. And maybe something that will make a difference to JBS is one of the big projects we're working on is being able to have truck transport across the country, not face different rules. So we want to be able to have a truck loaded up in Vancouver and then able to get across the entire province without having to worry about different weights and axles and widths and colors of ribbon for safety that is on the back. Like those are irritations for our trucking industry and creates barriers of transporting goods east-west. So that one is well underway to create mutual recognition on that one as well. Yeah.
Hello, thanks for taking my question. Anne-Marie Tricky with CBC Radio-Canada. So again, on this tariffs, of course, tomorrow is when we're expecting Trump to announce his tariffs. I just wanted to talk about your strategy about, speaking to American media, politicians, personalities. How do you see this as helping Team Canada approach as a whole? And do you think that this has an impact on Canada's ability to really have a united front with regards to these tariffs?
Yes. I mean, when we started off, it was agreed by all the premiers that we would work our contacts so that we would talk to every single individual elected member of office and incoming member of the administration, including influencers and podcasters, to do everything we possibly can to ward off tariffs, delay tariffs, or get them canceled altogether. And so I've just continued in that strategy, and I'm going to continue in that strategy. I would say that when my most recent trip to speak with Ben Shapiro, he is the second largest listened to podcaster in the United States. He's got an audience in all his platforms of 25 million. We had a very constructive conversation where I talked about the integration of our economies on everything from oil and gas in Alberta to critical minerals in British Columbia, Ontario, Quebec, and all of our provinces and territories, cars from Ontario, uranium from Saskatchewan. And that, to me, is what the Team Canada approach is. Every single province has a vital, important relationship with the U.S. that has mutual benefit. And the next day, Mr. Shapiro spent a good deal of his podcast talking about why he's so opposed to tariffs. So those are the kind of things, those are the influencers that will have influence on the decision makers around the president. And from what I'm hearing, they still haven't settled on what it's going to look like tomorrow. So I think we had to do a full court press right to the last minute. We're going to keep on doing that.
Perfect. And just to follow up on that, you kind of touched on it, but so you're anticipating on continuing with this strategy,
yep,
despite, of course, there's a lot of uncertainty about it tomorrow, but if it goes forward, that's still going to be your main strategy?
Sure is. Yep. I mean, I have a number of different relationships that we built because Alberta's had an office in the United States since 2005. We've had a representative there representing our government for a number of years. We've built great relationships across party lines, both Democrat and Republican. It has served us well. We would have been prepared if there had been a different approach, or if the Americans had gone Democrat as the approach that we have going Republican. And that's what you're supposed to do. That's what diplomacy is that you're supposed to talk to both sides of the aisle because you never know what the voters are going to do. And I think that perhaps that's why our strategy has been a bit more effective. We actually knew who to call, and we had relationships with people who are decision makers. And I think it's good for Canada that we do have that and that we're able to leverage those relationships and hopefully make a difference.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll take one more from the mic here, and then we'll move over to the phones.
Hello, Premier Smith.
Hi.
Our latest CTV polling by Nano says that fewer than 25% of people on the prairies are against using oil and gas and other energy items to fight back against Donald Trump's tariffs. So why do you say that if Canada decided to use our resources to strike back at America, it would spark a unity crisis when it appears that the majority of Canadians would support such action?
Well, I think it's a garbage poll, frankly, and you can let your bosses know that, because what if we were to ask Albertans or Canadians this? Would you support export tariffs if it meant the U.S. would retaliate by shutting off Line 5 and leaving Ontario and Quebec without gasoline or aviation fuel at all? I think you'd get a different answer. I think people need to look at a map, see where Eastern Canada gets its oil and gas from, and realize that it's a very, very dangerous game to be talking about tariffing energy and to talk about turning the taps off. I think we saw that when it was attempted with electricity. The result was immediate. The Americans came forward with a 50% tariff on steel and aluminum, and it had to be walked back. So I don't even want to play with that fire on a cross-border trade worth $150 billion.
Okay, thank you. And then with the carbon tax gone, the biggest tax on fuel here now is the province's fuel tax. Now, there is a mechanism, of course, for fuel tax relief tied to the price of WTI. But would Alberta consider getting rid of its provincial fuel tax entirely to give drivers a break?
So remember, we have fuel taxes in place to pay for roads. This is a big road announcement, so we need to have the money to pay for it from somewhere. The federal government also has another fuel tax that they ostensibly use to pay for roads as well, and they have GST also. So what we were opposed to was the carbon tax, which was 17.6 cents a liter, just driving up the cost of everything that is transported every time you fill your tank, and we're glad to see it gone. We've been advocating against it. Our fuel tax relief program kicks in when WTI is over 90. So our idea is that if we're getting windfall revenues from the high price of oil, then we should make sure that we're rebating it back to consumers. We're not in that case right now. What I think we need to make sure is that all of the retailers pass on that savings to their customers. I've been told, it's a little far away, but I've been told in the Edmonton area there is one gas station that's down to $1.14 a liter. So I don't think I've seen those prices in some time, and that's part of the reason why we're pleased that finally the federal government succumbed to the immense pressure by our government, other provincial governments, the federal opposition leader, and have done the right thing and eliminated that tax.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to head over to the phones. Operator, could you put through our first caller, please?
Your first question comes from the line of Rick Bell with Post Media. Please go ahead.
Good morning, Premier. I'm going to ask you the elephant in the room question, and the folks down there in the Brooks area will probably know what I'm going to ask if I'm saying it's the elephant in the room question. If Carney wins and he becomes the prime minister, he seems to indicate he wants to be with his recent pronouncements, which basically are not taking your demand seriously. And if, as expected, many Albertans would be very happy with a fourth term of the Liberals, particularly if they're pursuing anti-Alberta policy, can you see a scenario where if Albertans desire it, the government of Alberta, not citizen-initiated, the government of Alberta, like the equalization referendum, the government of Alberta would put a secession referendum on a ballot?
No, I can't foresee that. We do have citizen-initiated referenda, and it will be up to Albertans to decide what kinds of questions that they want to put forward. I don't think we've seen any successful citizen-initiated referenda yet, but that's the mechanism for things like that. For my part, what I'm going to do is continue to advocate for whoever happens to be the prime minister to make good on the 9 things that we want changed. We want to see an end to emissions caps. We want to see an end to net zero power regs, net zero vehicles, net zero building codes. We want to make sure that we control our own environment for methane emissions. We want to make sure that we don't have a ban on tanker traffic off the West Coast, that we have control over our process to approve pipelines with an end to Bill C-69 and a couple of other things. Those are things I'm advocating for, and I will continue advocating for them after the election. I will give whoever happens to be in the chair 6 months to make good on trying to address some of those critical problems for Alberta. And then at the same time, I'll be going across Alberta on what I'm calling our What's Next panel to see what kind of feedback we get. But we can't stop trying to get the right policies in place. As I mentioned, we have a prime minister right now who says one thing in English, one thing in French, one thing in Eastern Canada, one thing in Western Canada, one thing to me, and then one thing to when he's asked by the media. So I don't actually know what this prime minister is going to do. I'm not encouraged by that flip-flopping so far, but we'll see what happens after this next election. But those are bottom line things. If you want to get pipelines built, if you want to get corridors established, if you want to open up markets, you have to get rid of all of the policies that are dampening investment in our country, and you can't have it both ways. So I'll continue pressing for it, and I hope there's a change of heart after the election.
Well, my supplementary is you during the Trudeau era, and even now in the very brief, and hopefully it will remain brief, Carney era, you have made many submissions and many requests of the Liberal government. And why would you rule out putting secession, not citizens, the government putting a secession referendum when that would be the attention grabber of all attention grabbers. That would be on the front page of the New York Times, the Washington Post, Fox News, BBC. It would be a global story if Alberta actually did that, as happened in Quebec very effectively. They never passed a secession referendum, but they had two of them, and boy, did that get the rest of Canada's attention. Why would you rule out a secession referendum for your government to put it on the ballot?
I got a mandate to try to fix Canada. I got a mandate to try to make Canada work. And that's what I've been working towards relentlessly over these last 2.5 years. As you know, we did put in place a process for citizen-initiated referenda, and I leave it to Albertans who may feel differently to put forward a petition campaign. But I think my job as an Albertan and as a Canadian is to try to put on the table the issues that are causing grave tension in our federation and to solve them. And I'm going to look at it on the positive side, because what I have observed is that it may be that the current prime minister doesn't get it, but all of the other premiers do. And we have consistently, for the last number of meetings, signed on to communiques talking about how we're going to build economic corridors. This last one, economic corridors with oil and gas and transmission lines, rail lines, and new highways and other infrastructure in those corridors. And so I believe there's goodwill on the part of the other premiers. The problem is, unless we solve those federal barriers, we're not, it's just words on paper. So I'm going to continue to use sort of that newfound sense of esprit de corps with my fellow premiers. We're going to do what we can after the election to make sure that we address those issues, and I'll keep an open mind. But so far, I'm dissatisfied with what I'm hearing out of the new prime minister. He doesn't seem to understand just how foundational these are if we're going to reset the relationship.
Thanks, Rick. We have time for a few more questions. We'll take a couple more from the phones before coming back to our mic for our last one. Operator, could you put through the next caller, please?
Your next question comes from the line of Jack Farrell with the Canadian Press. Please go ahead.
Hi, Premier. The Narwhal had an article last week about how the Alberta government was doing some, engagements about potentially killing our industrial carbon tax in Alberta and, the TIER program. I got told by Minister Scholl's office, that we are doing a review of TIER. I'm just kind of hoping that you can kind of give me the firm answer on, is Alberta planning to kill its industrial carbon tax?
The answer, it has to change. I think there's no question about it. We had to sign on to federal stringency requirements and escalation requirements that the industry keeps telling us are going to be incredibly damaging to investment, especially with the change of heart in the United States. So we have to figure out what that right level is, how the program should look. But those are very much active consultations right now. What I would say is we've had industrial pricing since 2007. And it has stimulated so much investment in new technologies. And I believe that technology is going to solve all of our emissions problems. So there will be perhaps a modification of what the current program looks like to make it work better. But we haven't settled on what that pathway is just yet.
And I guess to follow this up, and, for the past, month or 2 months now, kind of through your political life, you've always advocated for increasing oil production in Alberta, and as of late, you've been saying we want to double it here, and we all know that technology can't or hasn't kept up with the pace of production, and keeping emissions down, the technology isn't quite there yet to do it successfully. So how do you kind of foresee this future where if we do double production and we get more pipelines and oil production really ramps up, that we don't have the technology in place to kind of protect us from those obvious outfalls that we see?
Well, I beg to differ. I think the federal government just filed a report internationally that showed that we actually are seeing a decrease in emissions from oil and gas, and there's a lot of reasons for that. We've decarbonized, of course, on our electricity grid. We have also seen a decrease in methane emissions by 45% from 2005 levels. And we are using carbon capture, utilization, and storage technology at scale. In addition, I would point out that oil and gas have a lot of uses other than burning it. There's petrochemical industry. There's asphalt. So we have a large number of non-combustion and construction uses for the products that come out of the ground. I think that has to be factored in. But more importantly, we've seen that some of the proposals that companies are putting forward are for additional carbon capture, utilization, and storage, decarbonizing the production through low emissions technology, whether it's natural gas with carbon capture or whether it's potential small modular nuclear or geothermal, or perhaps we build some transmission lines so we can get hydro across the country. Those are other aspects. And we also have a demonstration project in central Alberta for direct air capture as perhaps a way to finish the last mile. So I wouldn't rule out this industry. This industry started off thinking the only thing they wanted from a barrel of oil was kerosene. And now here we are today with 6,000 products that come from a barrel of oil. So I have every expectation that the industry is going to find the answer.
Thank you. And we'll take one more question from the phones. Operator, could you put through the next caller, please?
Your next question comes from the line of Chris Varco with Calgary Herald. Please go ahead.
Hi, Premier. This is a question. I wanted to ask you about two issues which are kind of interconnected. One is the trade corridor discussion, and the other one is the tariffs. How would any new trade or energy corridors actually help Alberta during this time of tariffs? And separately but connected to it, what do you expect to see from the U.S. administration tomorrow when it comes to tariffs?
I'll finish with the last one first. It's hard to predict the U.S. president, and I don't really want to get ahead of myself because I don't want to you never want to be wrong, but my inclination from what I've heard from different different administration officials is that it looks like it's just going to be sectoral application for the most part. And then they talk about reciprocal tariffs. And so we don't have any tariffs on their oil and gas. So I'm assuming that means that they're not going to have tariffs on our oil and gas. I think for the bulk of our food production, with the exception of supply management, I think we also don't have tariffs. So I would expect that our food production should also be tariff-free. He's quite clearly concerned about the auto sector, pharmaceuticals, semiconductors, steel, aluminum, and timber and supply managed industries. So I'll be watching to see what that looks like there. But we've been making the argument that raw materials and intermediate goods should not be tariffed at all because those go into making value-added products. And I'm hopeful. That's what I'm hoping to see tomorrow. But we really just won't know until we see the result. They seem to be. I've been saying this from the beginning. They seem to be really irritated by national sales taxes because, of course, the Americans, although they have state and local sales taxes, they don't have a national sales tax. So if you read any of the work of the economists advising the president, it seems like that our GST or harmonized sales tax is what they really look at as a form of tariff. It isn't, but that's how they're looking at it. So that's maybe where it might end up falling, is if they're going to try to put a border adjustment tax in that's equivalent to that. That would be what I'll be looking for tomorrow.
And just to follow up, I wanted to ask you about how the energy corridors would help. I mean, we've been having discussions in this country for years about establishing economic and trade corridors, and it's come up again, obviously, on the campaign trail in the last few days. How do you think that these corridors would actually make a difference this time?
I can tell you how they'd make a difference in Alberta because we have a number of different corridors we propose. Obviously, we've talked about Energy East, and we know what that pathway would look like. For anything to go through Quebec, I think we'd need to find a different route, and we'd need to make sure that the Bloc Québécois did not have the majority of seats in the next election because they seem to be the spoiler, the one who's most outspoken against taking a true Team Canada approach. But we shouldn't be surprised. They want to break the country up. But aside from that, I would say that we have a number of different proposals that could potentially work. In Manitoba, you've probably seen that Premier Wab Kinew has announced the first gold mine in the province in 15 years and in an additional investment in the Port of Churchill. So if we can get a corridor, and we already have an economic corridors agreement that Minister Dreeshen signed with Saskatchewan and Manitoba, get to the Port of Churchill or one of the ports in the Bay, then with icebreakers made in British Columbia or Quebec or Nova Scotia, then we'd be able to offer that as an option year round. The other option we're looking at is, I've advocated for, along with my premier counterparts in Northwest Territories and Nunavut, is Grays Bay, which I think would be extraordinary to be able to have a northern port that would assist us with Arctic security and offer a faster pathway to get to Europe as well. and all of the critical minerals that would open up. So that's another major one. And then I think there's at least 3 or 4 projects that could potentially go to the West Coast. Either a brand new project similar to what we had approved already with Northern Gateway before the Liberals canceled it, or some kind of spur line from Trans Mountain. And I think that there's been some reporting, maybe you've done it yourself, about the 3 different potential options for spur lines from Trans Mountain. So when you look at those, if you could increase the pipeline egress in any or all of those by 2 million barrels a day, so that we can get more of our product to Europe, more of our product to Asia, and crowd out some of the less reliable partners around the world. I just think that's going to be a good way to demonstrate that we're supporting our allies and providing energy security. So 2 million barrels a day, that would be 50% more production. If we could solve our tariff dispute with the U.S., there's another 2 million barrels per day of pipeline proposals by 2030 to the U.S. So we could get to my goal of doubling our production, which I think would be very good for Albertans.
And we'll take one more question from the mic in the room here. Go ahead.
Happy birthday, Premier. Thank you for taking my question. Sarah, often with Global News, I wanted to ask specifically about some concerns that were raised to me by not only staff, but patients of the, families of the patients in the oncology ward at Alberta Children's Hospital. We received a memorandum about changes to food delivery in hospitals and urgent care centers. AHS has since said that the popsicles will remain, but can you give any clarification to this story, and can you, I guess, give any context in terms of what changes are going to be taking place?
All I can tell is that there was something lost in translation. What AHS, and this was a decision that was made back in September, their intention was to change food delivery so that they could reduce any potential spoilage and waste, which makes sense. We want to be efficient. We don't want food going to spoil or waste. But somehow that got implemented in a way that was not consistent with what the policy was. So when we heard these stories, Minister LaGrange immediately called over to AHS and said, what is going on? And the new CEO is putting a pause on the policy to find out why it was interpreted incorrectly. And if we can still find some ways to save, we want to make sure that we can save on food wastage, but the intention was never to deny patients sustenance while they're waiting for treatment or after treatment. So it was a misapplication and a misinterpretation of a policy direction that's since been paused.
Thank you. And just a question, if it's okay for Mr. Freach, the president of JBS, I wanted to ask, just in the face of these tariffs, and not only when we're talking about U.S. tariffs, but the Chinese tariffs, how severe are they for companies like yours and the industry, and what more can Canada or the provincial government be doing to ensure that, people like those that are surrounding us are gainfully employed in the future?
Yes. Well, I can definitely, it's not for lack of effort. The Premier is being very relentless, talking to the industry and talking to us to mitigate the risk. Of course, tomorrow we're going to know for sure, but I can assure you with the work from the company, from the team members, from the community stakeholders, and from the Alberta province and the federal government, I can assure you we're going to navigate it through this, through some rough waters if it comes. But there's alternative solutions for that for sure. And the typically crisis moments is when we learn the most, and we learn a lot about our future opportunities.
Thank you. And that's all the time we have for questions today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And just as well, we'll be taking a quick group photo here just for the workers, lovely workers surrounding us here. But you can follow Yana and Finn for some direction. We'll just head off to our right beside the podium. Thank you.